Good Friday morning, friends. Welcome back for another episode of the Finding God in the Dark podcast. My name is Don,
And my name is Jonathan.
and today we are talking about I think it was 1999. Um,
No, it was much earlier. It was 2019, I think.
okay, right, 2019. I knew it was anyway. Film called Brightburn. Uh, I, it's interesting. I hadn't looked into the credits before. Now, Elizabeth Banks is the mom, plays the mom in this
Yeah.
film. And there's some other familiar faces. But one of the executive producers on the film is a fellow who really made his bones in Hollywood by turning a little known Marvel franchise into a blockbuster
Yep. Done.
called Guardians of the Galaxy, a guy by the name of James Gunn.
Yeah.
So you can, when you know that, you see his fingerprints all over this film.
Yeah, he
Uh,
did.
it is in its essence, it is basically kind of a what if. It's listed as a science fiction horror,
Yeah.
but it's a what if, what if Superman was the bad guy,
Yeah.
rather
Yeah.
than the good
Because
guy.
they even said it in a fictional town in Kansas.
Yeah,
They're really going after the Superman
yeah,
connection.
100%. So, it's as I said, it's listed as a horror film. It certainly has horror elements to it.
Yes.
Um, I think you used a great word for it right before we started recording. Creepy. It's a
Yeah.
creepy film. You know, um, where do you want to start as far as themes go, John?
Well, I mean, I think again, a pretty obvious theme, I guess, is the idea of you know, can ultimate power not corrupt? And you, it's interesting because I've always found it interesting. I've never been a huge comic book fan or, I've watched a lot of the movies. I don't mind them at all, but I didn't grow up reading comic books after comic book. But I never got the fact that people didn't examine more the idea that if Superman was who Superman is power-wise, he would be much more likely to do things like this kid does
Yeah.
than go out of his way to serve and restrain himself. I mean, and I don't think that's not a statement. I think that's just a human statement. Think about the totality of history. There are much more examples of people having power and using it in ways that brought destruction and horror to a lot of other people, then there are examples of people using power and, kind of stepping away or doing things that benefited other people at their own cost. And so the Superman ideal is the idea that this person that can basically do anything he wants will go out of his way to defer to other people and other people's needs. And that's nice. And I do think there are examples of that, but most human history is littered with the opposite.
I think the two stories, if you lay this next to Superman, okay, I think the two stories really engage in the nature versus nurture argument,
Yeah.
right? Whereas the Superman argues for the nurture
Yeah.
argument. And that the whole thing that Superman was a blank slate,
Yeah.
and what made him the hero, the American hero, truth, justice, and the American way, was his upbringing and
Yeah.
his family. And in the last Superman film, which we did talk about on this podcast, they nerfed that a little bit by making his parents into space Nazis,
They
which
really,
is
it's interesting because it's a James Gunn movie
yeah,
and he actually argues the exact opposite point.
yeah.
In this movie,
Well,
it's who he is going to be who he is. And
there's a scene
yeah,
in the beginning of this
yeah,
film that I think lays out when, particularly like I've seen it before.
yeah.
And I hadn't remembered this scene, but it's a scene, the only scene in the classroom in school
Mhm.
when they're talking about honeybees.
Yeah.
And the teacher asks, what's the difference between bees and wasps?
Yeah.
And none of the kids want to answer. And then finally, this, I forget his
Brandon.
name,
Brandon.
Brandon. Yeah, Brandon says, well, bees are pollinators, wasps are predators.
Yeah.
But then he goes on this thing about this certain kind of wasp that forces other wasps to raise its children. And I'm like, oh, that's you. Okay, you're that species, which is the whole nature argument, just the opposite of the Superman nurture argument.
Yeah.
Fascinating. I
For,
mean,
for those who don't know what we're talking about, in the newest Superman movie, we find out in about the middle of the movie that um, Superman's parents, who sent him here from Krypton, actually sent him here to take over. Basically, said you can take over this planet and you can rule, and that's why we picked it. So, and the movie makes the point that his loving parents nurtured him into seeing it another way, and he doesn't want to do that. And this movie again flips that on its head and says he's powerful. He comes from a species that wants to take over. I mean, one of the things he hears toward the beginning of the movie is, take the planet,
take the world, right?
take the
Yeah,
world, take
take
the
the
world,
world. Yeah.
and he basically goes, "Yep, yeah, that's what I'm doing."
That's what I'm gonna do. Which then that whole premise, and folks, the film is at least 7 years old.
Yeah,
Spoiler alert.
yeah,
Um, that whole premise of conquer the world
yeah,
kind of gets turned on its head at the end of the film when he stages this plane crash that
yeah,
supposedly kills his parents
yeah,
and sort of goes back to just I'm going to, well, now I'm a poor orphan boy.
yeah,
Well, if you're going to take over the world and nobody can beat you, here's your opportunity.
yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I thought of last week's movie when I was watching this, and I also
Hmm.
thought of a movie that I've seen, I like a lot, I've seen a long time ago, 7 Years in Tibet. Um,
Okay.
so I'll start with the movie last week. Last week, there's a time in which somebody says, I don't think AI will see us as a threat. They'll see us like we see ants.
Hmm.
And they'll go like, they're not mad at ants, they're not mad at us, but they need to build a road. We don't think about ants. We just build the road. And so that made me think of this, Brandon character where he's like, you guys are beneath me. He actually says that at one point, I'm superior. And so he's like, why should I care about you? And then I thought about there's a scene in 7 Years in Tibet where the main character played by Brad Pitt is staying in the Dalai Lama's residency, and the monks are building a road, and they're sifting through all the dirt as they're going. So before they break ground, they literally are sifting through the dirt. And he asks somebody, what are you doing? And they go, we want to remove all the life we can because we don't want to kill life, you know. And those two instincts are really part of this conversation of this movie. This idea of how would a superior being see us? And would that superior being care what we felt? You know,
Yeah, it's a fascinating. I'm putting these films next to each other is really and even more so when you consider they come from the same guy. You
yeah,
know, I mean, Gunn didn't direct it. He did direct the Superman film, but he
yeah,
didn't direct this. But still, he's the executive producer. His fingerprints are all over it. It's an interesting take. You
yeah,
know, it certainly at least says something to James Gunn's motivations in that he's probably not ideologically driven if he'll do the same story from two different directions.
yeah.
You know, um, so that's I think fascinating. What else?
Well, I mean, I think this idea, I don't know, I always think it's a powerful idea for Christians to set with that we worship and believe that the God of the universe, so essentially Brandon, on steroids,
Hmm.
chose to give all of that up to be in relationship and to heal the wounds we had created,
Yeah.
right? And so that gives us a very different example of how you use power and what you use power for. Unfortunately, too many Christians forget that lesson, but that is an essential lesson of the incarnation. This idea that God wants to be in relationship with us, wants to solve a problem, and instead of just flattening everybody, that the God of the universe chooses to become weak, become vulnerable, and even live and die so that we can have a better relationship with that superior being.
Yeah, and how often do we hear those comparisons too, and particularly in theological circles, right? Of, Christ to Superman. You
Yeah,
you get that, he's sort of the ultimate Christ figure,
yeah,
apart from the sacrifice, because Superman's invulnerable. But yeah, we get that discussion a lot. Um I was I think well, you touched on parenting. I think that's part of the nurture nature
yeah.
argument, right?
Mhm.
Um, there's the next thing you wrote there, facing difficulties about people you love.
Yeah,
That this is a good one. And of course, there's plenty of drama films that do this.
yeah,
Um, not most of them are not in my wheelhouse, not my kind of films
yeah,
necessarily, but this really, to look at particularly Elizabeth Banks' struggle with, okay, this is the child that I love, that I've raised from the time we found him in a crashed spaceship in the woods as a baby. But my son, no
yeah,
different than, you and I have both adopted kids,
yep,
no different.
yeah,
Um, and and yet now he has become something else,
yeah,
someone else. And that struggle between, I love my son, but this is not good, you
yeah.
know.
Hmm.
Like in this case, I mean, obviously, the film, this is an extreme case,
Yeah,
like this is not good for the whole world.
yes,
But it really is a reflection on any of us could have these challenges with our own kids.
yeah.
Know,
No,
when my
absolutely.
when my kids do things, and I know we've talked about it.
Mhm,
We both have at least a son
mhm.
who is particularly challenging,
Yeah,
or has been, let's
yeah,
say has been,
sure, absolutely.
and where do you find that balance between, I love you and I want to break a piece off of the spaceship, which is the only thing that can hurt you and kill you with it. Be a middle ground there, so.
Well, I don't know, I think there's an interesting, I mean, even though this is a 90-minute film, it's popcorn kind of
It
horror.
is it is a bull rush of a film. I mean, it
Yeah.
just runs straight through.
But there are some really interesting kind of conversational pieces, I think, in this.
Hmm.
And one is like the parents trying to control the whole situation when it was clear from everybody, it's from the audience at least perspective, it's clear from the very beginning, you don't just pick up the kid and don't deal with the fact that this kid falls out of the sky. Like you don't you, you, you know, there are numerous points where you're like, yes, you get help, and yes, you talk about this, and yet, why wasn't this child in therapy? Why weren't you telling this child from the very beginning who he was, and why weren't you from the very like? There's a point at which the father is reluctant to have kind of a pretty big talk with Brandon, and you're like, why weren't you knew this? Like at one point they go like, he never bled, he never got hurt, he never had a bruise. And you're like, if you know this about this child from the very beginning, why aren't you trying to shape him in a way where he has compassion and mercy for things that are more vulnerable than he is? You know.
There's an interesting. I had a thought here, and now it's escaped me. But there's an interesting sort of dichotomy in that, in that. like if you had said something at the beginning, here we go back to the the conversation piece, right? We it was a couple of weeks ago we talked about a film. If only, it was Obsession. If only that friends had talked to each other, none
Yeah.
of that would ever have happened, right? And it is a similar kind of situation here. If only the conversations were had. If only you had. Okay, here's where I was. There's a certain innocence to the original Superman story,
Mhm.
right? It's set in the 50s.
Yeah.
And, if that suppose, a star baby falls out of the, you can buy that.
Mhm.
In today's culture, that's a much harder sell, right?
Mhm.
What are you really doing? You're calling the police and the fire department and the ambulance, and the government's coming in and taking that child, and you're never in the equation, other than the reporting party.
Yeah.
So it's almost a commentary on modern society,
Mhm.
in that you didn't do probably what were the norms for modern society,
Well, and
and you pay the price for it.
well, also this idea that was never fully flushed out, but it was a major part of American life, at least in the 20th century. This idea that the nuclear family solves everything, that a
Right.
healthy mom and dad in a good relationship can make a perfect existence for kids. And that
And
wasn't true in the 1920s, and it isn't true today. We need
well,
a
but
community.
let's be fair. Let's be
Yeah,
fair about that.
yeah,
You're true. It does not always do that, but
yeah.
it's got a whole lot better chance of doing that than
No,
than
I
a
don't,
lot of the
I'm,
options.
I'm not, I think nuclear families are wonderful. I think
Yeah.
happy marriages are great. I'm just saying the idea that two people can ever create a world in which the kid gets whatever they need is not true. It has
Yeah. No, you're right.
you need
Yeah.
a bigger community. And, you know, what's fascinating is like Lori here, the mother, her sister is a counselor. I mean, that is
Mhm.
literally her job.
She's a
And
school
yet
counselor. Yeah.
she clearly hasn't talked to her sister about who Brandon is and what Brandon needs and all of that kind of stuff. And all along the way, you're just like, you had to have a sense this kid was going to be radically powerful or radically different. Why weren't you trying to be more intentional about raising him in a different way? Like,
Right.
it's just kind of interesting. Like, to me, one of the funniest scenes, and it wasn't meant to be funny, and it isn't funny on its face, but it's just funny, haha, I guess, is they know this kid is invulnerable. Like they say that earlier on in the movie, like he's never bled, he's never, and then the father tries to shoot him, and you're just like, why did you think that was gonna work? Like,
Well, no, he doesn't try to shoot him. He shoots him, but it doesn't affect him.
yeah, and like in that moment, I'm just like, that wasn't well thought out.
No. Yeah, exactly. Like, oh, well, this'll work. Oh,
Yeah, I just was kind of fascinated about how this movie, in a weird way, is about control. It's about Brandon figuring out, these people are beneath me, so I can control them, do whatever I want, and that's what I'm going to do. But it's
mhm.
also about the parents trying to control a situation that was always out of control and that they needed help with. Like,
Yeah, and I would say there's probably also something to be said here about a lack of control or lack of self-control in particular,
yeah,
because once Brandon realizes that nobody can stop him from doing whatever he wants to do,
yeah.
he does whatever he wants to do.
It's very much a kind of a allegory in an interesting way about um, what I would call a self-centered life. Like
Mm,
Brandon, like even in the last scene, Brandon kills his mom by basically taking her up to the atmosphere and dropping her. And then he sees a plane coming toward him, and clearly he thinks, "Oh, I can cover all this up," you know.
yeah,
And he kills over 200 people just so that he can hide a little longer from who he is.
yeah. Or hide. hide who he is from the world.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. It's yeah, controlling. It's that's a huge yeah, it's a huge part of this film. Um,
Yeah.
Interesting you wrote remorse and compassion together because I think you look at iconically at the characters in the film,
Yeah.
particularly mom is compassion.
Yeah.
Um, the dad is remorse,
Yeah.
and Brandon is absolutely absence of remorse.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I mean, as several times in the movie, he cannot. He basically is revealed to be a psychopath. I mean, that's basically like
Mhm.
there are a couple times in the movie where like the normal human reaction would be horror about what you did, or at least kind of shame, or at least feeling bad about the fact
Mhm.
that someone died or someone got hurt, and he's
Grief,
got
lack of an
nothing.
absolute lack of grief when, he's told his uncle died
Even at the very end of the movie, we see him after he's killed over 200 people and his mom. We see
and
him
his dad
and
and the waitress from the
and,
diner.
and we see him just laissez-faire eating a cookie, and you're just like, what now?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a little disturbing,
He
right?
basically has become the kind of aphorism that was talked about last week. He basically is an AI looking at us as ants and like going, "You're ants. Like, why would
Yeah.
I?"
You are, well, what did he say? You wrote the quote down. I'm something superior.
Yeah,
Yeah, and he's completely 100% full of that superiority, isn't he?
yeah,
Um, I think it'd be interesting. I'm sure there's no plan for it considering, 7 years down the line, but I think it'd be interesting to see, you know, how the story continued to play out, you
hmm
know,
yeah,
because it's the Joseph Campbell, the hero's journey, right? When there's adversity, a hero rises. And
yeah,
so you wonder who could write a story that could take this idea of, the ultimate superpowered bad guy and who's the hero that rises, Um, I'd be interested in seeing that film.
yeah. Yeah, I do think it's unfortunately I feel like this outcome's much more likely than the Superman outcome.
Considering human nature.
Yeah,
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, what do we? I love using this idea. I've used it in churches when we talk about sin, right? When we talk about sin in a sermon, well, the Greek word. It's time for your Greek lesson, folks. The Greek word for sin in the New Testament is hamartia,
yeah,
which is an archery term, which means to miss the mark.
yeah,
So what Paul was saying, what Jesus was saying is that you miss the mark. You're not perfect, you're not on target, you miss the mark with the things that you do. It's part of who you are. You can't aim right.
yeah,
And now amplify that by 10,000.
yeah.
And what you get is Brandon. What you get is this character. Um, yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
sin personified, let's say,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, I mean, again, and to be fair, even to context, think about just have a kind of imaginary reflection about yourself and think about if you could do anything you wanted to do, how easy would it for you, how easy would it be for you to cross a line? Because, oh, I'm doing the right thing and these people are in my way,
Yeah,
you know. Um, and that's what's scary about investing too much power in any one person is because, you know, you can easily find your way to justifying some horrible things because you're doing what you think is right.
collateral damage, right?
Yeah.
What's the collateral damage of, well, hey, I'm just doing the right thing. Okay, but sometimes the right thing don't work out that way. And in this case, I mean, there's no sense that Brandon's doing the right thing. He's just doing what he wants.
Yeah, he
You know.
literally is just, I want this, I'm doing this,
Well, again, I'm gonna come up with one of those old images that I've used. Years ago, I went to a youth conference in Ocean City, back when we were just the Southern New Jersey Conference. And Duffy Robbins, who was a professor at Eastern University, came to speak to the kids. And he was talking about sin. And he said, here's how I want you to understand sin. So I want you to visualize the word SIN. Now, capitalize the I.
Mhm.
So when you make I bigger than everything else, I more important, more upfront than everything else,
Yeah,
that's when you're stepping into your sin.
yeah,
I thought it was really clever, visualization. And in this film, it is 100%.
yeah,
Brandon puts himself above everything else. If he wants it, he takes it. Um, I have a child that does that.
yeah, yeah. I mean, not to that extreme, but yes.
Certainly not to that extreme, obviously, or I'd be dead. But
No, but I do think we all have those tendencies, and that's the danger of how we view other people sometimes. Sometimes
that's
we
fair.
can, you know, um, I always find fascinating is when people like encounter people who are homeless or people encounter people who are prisoners, and they'll say to you, they'll go say this, something like, "They're just like us," and I'm like, "Uh-huh." Like that's what we lose sight of is
Yeah.
we all have those tendencies. That's why we're called to work on controlling them.
Hmm.
That's why the work of the Holy Spirit is to sanctify us and to draw us out of ourselves and into Christ. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the language of Christianity, but that's what why we believe it's necessary because we all have those tendencies. We all have the tendency to be a Brandon if given enough power and enough ability that
Yeah.
we would tend to misuse it because it's what we want to do.
Yeah, it's interesting that when you're talking about, that realization that, folks are just like us. Some of the most powerful moments in ministry I've had were like taking youth group on a mission trip
Mhm.
where we lived in a homeless shelter for
Yeah,
a week.
yeah,
And the kids were just like, these people are just they're no different than you are. They
yeah,
are no, I said, here's where we have to be careful, okay, as far as doing this mission trip. I don't want you to go home from this trip and realize the only thing that you got from it was a realization of how much better your life is than somebody else's.
yeah,
But, let's focus on the fact that Christ has given us a call to help other people, and that's your calling. These people are, why you go to church. These people are why you have a pastor who's encouraging you to help. These are the people, not, oh, my life is so blessed. Look what I don't have to do or don't have to put up with or don't have to live like. No, you're missing the point.
yeah.
Um, anyway, I think I went off a little on a tangent there just because it sparked a memory for me. But um, what else? For it's not technically a comic book movie,
No,
because there was no comic book prior to for this story.
sure.
It is a something of a superhero slash supervillain type of story,
Mhm.
without question, but not a comic book word. But and it's not. I wouldn't call it purely a horror film either. Purely, it's a. I mean, it's almost a standalone. Uh-oh. You okay?
Oh, I don't know what happened there. I apologize. Not sure what happened.
I don't know. But if well, it looked like the camera went towards your feet or something.
Yeah, I'm gonna I have to figure out. I have a new laptop, and for some reason it's connected. It is connected to my phone, and so I was trying to look up for a movie for next week, and unfortunately, my phone turned into a camera, and now you see my feet. So
I don't see anything right now, just your name. So,
there you
all right. Well, listen, that's probably a good point to wrap up. Anyway,
go.
we're inside of 10 minutes. So, um, bottom line on Brightburn, it's an interesting film.
Yes.
I don't know that I would recommend it necessarily unless you like that particular style of film. Horror films, something of a comic book genre. It definitely has some things that'll make you think. But I wouldn't put it on my, highly recommended list necessarily. Um, so where would you like to go for next week, John?
Um, I don't know. Was there something that jumped out at you?
Well, were we saving Project Hail Mary for a guest?
Yeah, we were. Have you seen emails or voicemails for Isabella?
I have not.
Okay, that's on Netflix. It's a romantic comedy, but it's got some interesting things I think we could talk about if you want to watch that.
Yeah, because my son's been chomping at the bit about Project Hail Mary, so I've been holding off watching it because I wasn't sure we were saving that for our upcoming guest when we can arrange that.
Yeah,
So
I will reach out to our hopeful guest and see if we can figure something out.
okay, good, because that's right now that's okay. Your screen's back. Your back screen
Yep,
is back.
yep.
Um,
See.
this maybe it's this film. Is this film jinxed?
No, I think unfortunately I'm old and don't know how to use my technology properly. So I'll keep working on it.
Okay. All right, friends. So next week's film is say it again, Jonathan. Voice
Oh,
emails,
voicemails for Isabella.
voicemails for Isabella. You'll find it on Netflix. Until next Friday, friends. Keep on finding God in the dark. We will see you all again. Well, I'll see you all again. I'm not sure Jonathan will. We'll see you all again next week. Take care. God bless. Bye.
Like,
Thanks
ah.
again for watching the Finding God in the Dark podcast, friends. If you've made it here all the way to the end of the video, then obviously you find something that we're doing to be educational or informative, something valuable in this podcast. So we want to invite you to go ahead and share this with your friends. Hit the like button. Follow us for more of this. We publish every week at 10 a.m. on Friday mornings on YouTube. Shortly thereafter, you'll find us somewhere on Facebook. Until next Friday, keep on finding God in the dark. Thanks for watching. Bye now.